On the 25th of April 1915, the Allies in World War I launched the land attack on the Gallipoli Peninsula.
The Western Front was locked in a stalemate, and Winston Churchill decided the answer was to mount an offensive through the Balkans. It failed.
This battle was one of the first involving the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, which became known as Anzac.
Of the 16,000 Anzacs who waded ashore on the first day, 2,000 were killed or injured by nightfall.
And on this day, we remember them all.
These are live pictures coming to you from the Anzac Day service in Sydney. Kath is there. Morning again, Kath.
Good morning, Paul. As you just mentioned, this service is now wrapping up. It's been going on since 4:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time, and it's really been a lovely service. We expected nothing less. Organisers were anticipating around 20,000 people here in Martin Place, and I think they've got it. Now, as we've been speaking about this morning, Anzac Day is held in Australians' hearts in a very dear place, none more so than General Peter Cosgrove, the former Defence Force Chief, and he joins me now. Thank you very much for your time this morning, General. Now, we were chatting earlier and you said you've spent the last couple of Anzac Days in Anzac Day services in Canberra. Yep. This is the first time in a while you've been in Sydney. How was it for you?
Oh, marvellous. Of course, the weather helps. I know that it's been raining over the last couple of years, but there was a bumper crowd today, reverent, very attentive. I thought it was a marvellous service. I think it's actually the most significant dawn service in the nation, because it's a place of such significance in a great big sprawling city.
What does Anzac Day, having served in Afghanistan, what does Anzac Day mean to you?
Basically, it's a time for all of us to get back together. The brotherhood that we formed through the military, especially with the Black Hats, our former unit. It's a time for everyone to reflect on people that have sacrificed their life and everyone that's served the country.
Now, James, you had the honour of serving with the Black Caps, or the Black Berets, if you like. Can you tell me a little bit about your time in Darwin and that unspoken duty that all you Black Caps rely on each other for?
I joined the Army when I was 18 and I was posted to A Squadron 1st Armoured Regiment, and there's a long history of the headdress, or as most units wear the slouch out, we wore the Black Beret, and I found all through my time in the Army and now that I'm out of the Army, the bond that us guys who wore the Black Berets together formed is just unbreakable.
Interestingly, I'll give you a little bit of history behind the Anzac Day service here in Sydney. In 1927, a group of 5 men from the Australian Legion of ex-service clubs were walking past the cenotaph on an Anzac Eve function, and they noticed a lone woman there laying a sheath of flowers. They asked if they could join her, and together the 6 of them bowed their heads in silence and paid tribute. At a subsequent meeting of these men, they decided that every year on Anzac Day, they should pay tribute here at the cenotaph. Now, in 1935, the 20th anniversary of the Anzac, that number swelled to 10,000 people attending that service. By 1939, it was 20,000, and it's hung around that number ever since.
Everybody shows their respect for and recognise what dawn service is all about.
Yes, they do.
And it's a very moving service for everybody, and even though, as you say, I've probably been to 30-odd dawn services.
They were your numbers, yeah.
My numbers, true. But I still find it, like everybody else does, a very moving experience.
Now, let's move forward. The march, you're about to set off and go on to the march. Sadly, but understandably, this year there are no World War I vets marching. They've all passed.
They've all passed, yes.
But they will be represented.
Yes, well, we have 2 horses leading the march. One, both just saddles with boots reversed in the stirrups. That signifies that the Boer War veterans have all marched off into history, and the same with our World War I veterans. So we recognise that those generations are no longer with us.
And other vets that will be marching today, they've served across a number of worlds, World War II, Malaya, Borneo, you name it. Tell us exactly who'll be marching today.
Look, literally anybody who's served in our Defence Force has seen service, and those are still serving in our Defence Forces. It's interesting to note, of course, that the dynamics of Anzac Day is changing. We're seeing less and less of our magnificent World War II men and women, and their numbers literally have been taken up by the younger veterans who've seen service in the last 10 or 15 years.
Isn't that great to see?
Yeah.
Just quickly before you go, there will be special services for our Aboriginal servicemen across the country today.
Yes, there will be, and particularly in a lot of our rural areas they've organised those ones. But we also, of course, during Aboriginal Week in May, that we actually have a special commemoration service at the Anzac Memorial to recognise our Aboriginals. And look, our Aboriginals have always been a very important part of our Defence Force. They bring great skills, bushman skills as well, into our Defence Forces, and you know, it's good to be able to recognise them.
I read in a magazine where a young boy posted a digger down at Anzac, down the Anzac Day March, and he said to him, "Why are you wearing those medals? Were you a hero?" And he said to the boy, "No, I was not a hero." He said, "But I fought with men who died up there for their country. They were the heroes. And those who fought for their country were the heroes." And he said, "What about the medals?" He said, "Well, I'm proud to wear those medals, and every time I put them on, I remember those men who fought and died on the track and other places in New Guinea."
And that's what you're thinking of on Anzac Day. You're thinking of the people that didn't return when you returned.
Yes.
Roy, how about yourself on Anzac Day?
Very similar to Ray. I thought he put it very, very well. I think, but at Anzac Day, when we at our reunions, we don't talk a lot about the horrors of the war. We talk about the funny things that happened through there, and it's. We think of our past comrades, of course.
See, that's an extraordinary thing, though, because I know I read that you talk about the humour, the fun times that you had together. Because when people think about what you'd done, about the fight, the fact that you were fighting the elements, you were fighting the Japanese, you were fighting fitness, of course, because a lot of people just dropped through illness. The thing that you talk about are the fun times. How did you squeeze fun times in?
Occasions like this, for example, we're in Port Moresby, there's an air raid, and there's Japanese, Americans quite nearby, and they'd scatter when the air raid alert comes on, and we were able to get into their camp and get some extra supplies and things like that. That was really quite...
So you took the opportunity of them being terrified to go in and steal stuff.
Yeah, well, it was funny because we're laying... like, I'm talking now about prior to Gona, and we're in camp in Moresby, up around 7 Mile, and we got so used to the air raids that you'd get the air raid warning from the coast watchers along the coast, and so we were aware that there's an air raid coming along, and you'd be a bit reluctant to get out of bed. And the next thing you know, the crash, the bombs are coming down, and you get out of bed very, very quickly.
And just in those few days that we were there, we had 98 killed, 168 wounded, and then the rest of them had malaria. So it was a pretty horrific place to be in. Yeah.
I thank you both very much for spending some of your Anzac Day with us. Roy and Ray, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay. Lovely to meet you both. Lovely to meet you both. You've got a good afternoon of remembering the funny stories.
Yeah, sure.
You absolutely have.
Hello there, sir. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm 98 years of age.
Wow. And where did you serve, sir?
New Guinea.
New Guinea. And how does it feel marching today?
I feel tired.
For 98, I think you're doing pretty well. The Anzac Day March here in Sydney is drawing to a close. There's around an hour's left in it, by which stage 20,000 service and ex-service personnel would have walked up George Street, honouring those who have served and who are serving for this country. No World War I vets this year, sadly, they've all passed, but they were represented by a memorial horse. The vets that I had the pleasure of speaking to today, one which sticks in my mind, a 98-year-old Kokoda track veteran. That's all from the Sydney March here. It's been a pleasure bringing you this broadcast, lest we forget.